Welcome to Bar Charts Market and Close. I'm your host, John Rowland, Bar Charts Senior Market Strategist. The S&P reaches its 26th new high this year, and even the Russell 2000 gets in and on the fun, marking its highest close since 2021. Elon drops some coin, and everybody has visions of grandeur. Has MicroStrategy's premium leverage over Bitcoin finally come to an end, or could the crypto itself save the day? The Fed dot plots tell us that we're heading into a low rate environment, and that's usually a tailwind for small caps. So where's the value? The Russell 2000 or the S&P 600? All that plus your questions, and to help me out, as always, Bar Charts Twitter Tom and my Mr. X. Hello, Thomas.
Hello, John. How are you?
Very well. Where are you these days?
I am still in Sicily, Italy.
Nice.
Sicily, Italy. I'm in Palermo, so I'm here until Monday, and then I will head up north, John.
Have you been to Corleone yet?
I didn't go to Corleone, but interesting thing, the movie was never shot in Corleone. It was actually shot in some different places, primarily outside of Taormina. So I went to the mansion, John, where Michael Corleone sort of keeled over in his chair, and Apollonia, his first wife, died in the car explosion. So I was able to visit
blown up,
that.
Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Yeah. So yeah.
All right, let's get into rock and roll, bro.
Jam-packed show. Guys, if you're watching directly on our website, you want to ask a question, just click Ask a Question at the top right. You'll see it in the orange color. And then if you're watching on our social channels, guys, go ahead and ask those questions in the chat or in the comments, and we will get to as many as possible. All right, John. So back around the end of April, you discussed the idea of a V-bottom occurring in the S&P 500. You gave an upper-level price target, which I believe was about 667.90, John. The index is basically right there. So, give us an update. How are you feeling about how things have unfolded, and where do you see things going next?
Yeah, so where we are. There we go. Yeah, we talked about V-bottoms as from just a technical aspect, is that when you get these V-bottoms and when the market can recapture the origin of the sell-off, then you can extrapolate the trough to a peak. And remember, we talked about the difference between bulls and bears, and that they have this slow methodical rise. And you can see the market has done exactly that. And then my target price, like you said, for the S&P, the SPY, is right here around 668-ish. So we're within less than, I think, a half a percentage point of reaching that target. Now it's kind of interesting that it's happening or getting very close on the triple witching days, because what I want to talk about next, Thomas, is that in my experience, and now this is just about this formation, is that when we reach one of these pinnacles or reach this objective target, that the market has a tendency to digest or go into maybe a bit of a consolidation, or even have a small drawback. So, let's look at some evidence here. And so here's a MACD and RSI. Now, we are getting back slightly into the overbought condition for the RSI. Nothing extraordinary, but here's what I see, Thomas, is that, we're making a new higher high, but, the RSI is making a lower high. And so that's negative divergence. We've talked about this in the past, and that a lot of times it takes a couple of negative diversions to actually kind of tell us that maybe the market is peaking. Now, if I go to a weekly chart, Thomas, then, we're not there in the overbought condition for the RSI. But again, if I change my parameters and I go back to, let's say, something like Bollinger Bands, how I love Bollinger Bands, notice that our target is right on the upper band. Now, the market could carry along a band. It could go higher. But, classically, when you get to the upper band or you get outside the upper band, it's usually telling you that you're going to have some type of a mean reversion. Now, if I go to, let's say, something like, our moving averages, notice that Our 20-day moving average is here around 652, but our 50, right down here around 640. Let me go back to our Bollinger Band so you can kind of see that. Our Bollinger Bands, our lower Bollinger Band is right around where that 50-day moving average is. So where do I think the market is going? I think it's going to kind of just trade sideways for a couple of weeks, maybe drift a little bit backwards. I'm not really concerned about the market unless we break outside of our 4-week low, which is this 63.50 area. But then again, think about that. That would be put price, a weekly close, if we get there, would put price below the 50-day moving average and outside the lower Bollinger Band, which could be a signal of increased volatility. And then where could the price go from there? Well, I think, we could see, something like an 8 to 10% correction, which puts us down into this little gap. You know how I feel about gaps. And that is around the 603 level, which is by also coincidence is very close to our 200-day moving average. So, Thomas, I think the evidence warrants that we're going to pause and maybe have a bit of a pullback. But I think it's more about, hey, we've reached our objective, and now we got to kind of reassess. If I'm got profits in the market, I've reached my target. So maybe this is a point where I want to take some profits, or at least buy some hedging protection to protect me in case, we do get that drawdown.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people, John, when the good times roll, people forget that an 8 to 10% correction is completely normal and it's healthy for the market. And honestly, John, I think at this point, a lot of people, myself included, would love to see a 10% correction so we can sort of, add to our favorite positions that have been working really well for us so far.
Yeah, I would agree with you 100% on that one.
All right, so let's jump from the broad market, John, to a specific stock which has been on a hot run. In fact, it's certainly been a driver of the overall stock market over the last couple of weeks, and that is Tesla. Now, John, our long-term viewers, they know, they've heard us talk about and discuss Tesla before, the merits, the cons, the pros. I've always been in the pro camp. You're more in sort of the negative, or at least the slightly concerned camp over Tesla and its future. But there's a couple of good stories that have happened this week, John. So one of which is this. Insider buy, the largest insider buy in Tesla's history, and that, of course, was by Elon Musk himself. He just bought $1 billion worth of shares, John. I don't think we've ever talked about somebody, maybe outside of Warren Buffett, buying over $1 billion worth of stock. This is a heck of a confidence boost to everybody, John. Previously to this, the largest buy was $100 million many years ago. That was also by Elon. So this is a magnitude of 10x, John, over his previous largest buy. That's a heck of an addition. And then I saw this story today, John. Baird Research. Baird. They came out and said that Tesla is headed to $3,000 within the next 10 years. Now, that price target is especially interesting, John, because we had just talked about this on a past show.
Right.
That Elon was going to be awarded $1 trillion comp, but in order to get that, Tesla would have to hit an $8.5 trillion valuation, which it would, John, if it gets to $3,000 a share. Listen, I said the last time we talked about it, I was bullish. This makes me bullish. Elon's insider buy makes me bullish. John, does it make you bullish?
I would say conservatively bullish, but let's have a little debate about this, because you know how I kind of feel about Tesla in some aspects, the car company versus, let's say, the tech company. But let me just go to this is kind of interesting that I think. Add my chart here. There we go. So here's the insider buy-in, and there's the Elon Musk buy, right? So he bought 2.5 million shares, which came out just below $1 billion. But I think that is kind of weird how that was just a very precise value. And then, you can see here how much he held. Now, which is kind of interesting is that purchase only really increased his holdings by 0.5%. Now, we always talk about, there's a lot of reasons why insiders sell, and there's only one reason why insiders buys, and that's because they're bullish on the stock. But I question the timing of this one. And, I know $1 billion to you and me and to our audience is probably an extraordinary amount of money, but, to Elon, it's probably just walking around money, right? Did he have an extra $1 billion in his pocket that was just burning a hole? He didn't know what to do. So I question the timing of this, in that I think it's more about, he is trying to put a good faith picture on this vote that is going to come up for his $1 trillion bonus. But there could be an ego thing here too, Thomas, right? Because at some point this past week, he was not the richest man in the world anymore. Larry Ellison from Oracle passed him. So actually, if you think about it from a trading aspect, I think this is a really great trade because he spent $1 billion in his portfolio, or his net worth went up by $17 billion. That put him back in first place. So that was a great trade. The question I have for you, Thomas, is where's the growth going to come from? It's not going to come from what I see, from the car company. It's more about, right, you got a lot of competition, and their margins have been shrinking. So talk to me why you're bullish on this and where you think the growth is going to come from.
John, I'm going to give a couple of reasons why in a second. There are times where I think you make an investment because you believe in the person at the top who's calling the shots. For those of you who watch Shark Tank, you see this all the time. The sharks may not necessarily love the idea, but they really believe in the person behind the idea, and that's why they give the investment. I believe in Elon. I think he's a visionary. I think he has a really strong grasp of where the future is going in tech, and I want to be along for the ride with him on that. As far as Tesla goes, AI, robotics are going to be huge drivers of the business. I don't think selling Tesla vehicles to consumers like you and I, John, is going to be the driver. But if you ask Kathy Wood, what does she like about Tesla? She's going to tell you robo-taxis. She thinks robo-taxis are going to be a huge driver of revenue and earnings within the next 5 years. And I think Elon feels that that's going to be a significant piece as well.
Yeah, but I don't know, does that warrant $1 trillion or $8 trillion valuation, robo-taxis? And I kind of hinted to this to you. This is another news story. I didn't get able to clip this before we came on live. Is that Waymo is now going to do a pilot program in Arizona where they're going to put Waymo into the public transit system. In other words, you're going to be able to go from the bus stop or the train station to your home, that last mile. And this is going to be a game changer in terms of the autonomous vehicle market, because, it really seems like Tesla is going to be more that premier or premium individual. And here you're not going to see Google is going to has gotten ahead of Teslas. And this is something I've said many times, is that when you're at the top of the heap, you attract a lot of competition, and then there is other competition in this autonomous driver space, and they're not the only one. And if you ask me, I think they're behind the curve. Now, again, like you said, I think Elon is a genius, and Elon is a genius, and that you're betting on that genius, right? But again, the reality of the world is that there's a lot of competition to come in all these spaces that he's going to try to succeed in. So I don't discount it. I mean, if you look at this from a trading aspect in the last couple of days, to me, it feels like this pop we got in Tesla was just basically because he bought, and nobody's bigger than the market. Maybe Elon is, I don't know. But to me, I think, this might be a long-term investment story. But from a trader's standpoint, in the short term, I think this is a lot of hype right now.
Yeah, and those are great points, John. Competition is always a problem. The one thing about Waymo, and I've looked into this, is their tech relies on pre-mapping and geo-fenced areas, so it's a lot more limited. Tesla's technology relies on vision-based systems. and it's already been trained on its huge fleet of cars. So Google and Waymo, it's always going to be a serious competitor. However, Tesla's advantage right now is so huge that I think it really is in the driver's seat, so to speak, going forward.
Yeah, you think about it, a Tesla car is really not a car. It's a data collector for Tesla, right? So yeah, I agree with you on that point. So that might be their competitive advantage. But Google is making some advances of AI of their own, and then these data centers. So maybe what we might hear from them is some kind of dynamic shift in the way that Waymo works. I don't know. I just think it was interesting that Waymo made this announcement kind of right in the same timing when Elon bought his $1 billion worth of shares. But time will tell on this one, right?
Absolutely. I was just about to say, John, let's do this. We're going to come back in 2035, 10 years from now. We'll see what the price is relative to the $3,000 target.
Hey, you might come back in. Me, I don't know where I might be. I might be pushing daisies.
All right.
All right, my friend.
John, let's move from Tesla to another high flyer, or it was at one point, and that, of course, is MicroStrategy. Now, John, you're on record. You've had some serious concerns and doubts about MicroStrategy and its valuation and its business approach. I will say price action has not been great of late, especially when you put it in comparison to, let's say, Bitcoin. John, what do you think about where MicroStrategy is, and do you think it still offers investors a potentially compelling opportunity?
Well, I mean, if you asked me this 6 months ago, that I said said if you wanted to buy Bitcoin, you might as well better buy Bitcoin than buy MicroStrategy, because MicroStrategy was trading at a 3 times premium to the value of Bitcoin. But just let me break down a couple things that is going on as of recent. So I did this little math this morning, and so let me check my notes here. So MicroStrategy holds right now 638,985 Bitcoins. And when I did the math this morning, I used $116,917, and I times that, and then I divided it by the outstanding shares. And so that tells me that Microsoft, as a what do they call them? Crypto treasuries, right? Right? A crypto treasury.
Exactly, yeah, crypto treasuries, yep.
So as a crypto treasury, the value of MicroStrategy is $261.42. Now, that premium that we saw last year or beginning of this year, was closer to 3 in terms of the price versus Bitcoin. And now it's down to 1.3. So what I think we're seeing here is what I said that was going to happen is you're getting this kind of this mean reversion where the price of the Bitcoin and the stock are going to come together. Does that mean that MicroStrategy is going to come to a 1-to-1 with Bitcoin? Yeah, maybe not. At that point, do I think that MicroStrategy is a good proxy for Bitcoin? Yeah, I think it's a much better proxy for Bitcoin, and it could be a buying opportunity. But how do we get there, right? So what is the one thing that has to happen? Well, is that, either MicroStrategy, the stock itself, has to fall, or the price of Bitcoin goes up. Now, I want to kind of show you this. This is kind of fascinating, Thomas. And this is I think you kind of hinted at this, is a graph of MicroStrategy's holdings of Bitcoin. You can see that in the beginning of January 25, they had around 450,000 Bitcoins, and now they have about 650,000 Bitcoins. So they added about 200,000 Bitcoins to their portfolio. But if we look at the price from January 1st to now, the valuation hasn't been there, right? It's pretty much the same price. So this is kind of proof of what I'm saying, is that this whole currency, crypto treasury idea that you're seeing a lot of other companies doing is kind of losing favor with stock market participants. So I guess the question I think to you would be is, do you think MicroStrategy is going to come back into the mean, or do you think that Bitcoin is going to rise? Now, before you answer that question, I just want to tell you guys why I think maybe, and I know this is going to knock you off your chair, why I think MicroStrategy might become a good value or proxy for Bitcoin is that each share of MicroStrategy now is worth 0.00232223 Bitcoins. Not a lot of Bitcoins, but that is a lot better than you would get, let's say, in an ETF, which is actually a factor of almost 4 worse than this. So, yeah, I think there is potential for this in the long run. But where do you think Bitcoin's going to go from here?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. So I do think the path that is most likely is we see a rise in Bitcoin's price. Now, people are waiting on it, John, because I know people are saying, well, the stock market keeps going up. How come Bitcoin isn't hitting new all-time high? Well, I think it might be headed there. So, John, on the daily chart, and again, this is a very short-term chart. I happen to notice an inverse head and shoulders pattern. This is a bullish formation, John. And it's coming close. It's still got a little bit of work left to do, I think, but it's coming close to really taking full form. And if it does, I think you could see Bitcoin head towards and test new all-time highs. What do you think, John?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think I see what you saw, this kind of this inverted head and shoulders. And I think you might think the neckline might be a little bit higher. But if we just look at it from this formation, you measure the head to the neckline, and then you can extrapolate and you can see where that is. It was about $5,900, I think, is what we could see as a target. Excuse me. But what we see here is that, we have gotten into this pink box, which is this area of resistance or a supply zone that I would call. And, I could even made a case with, I want to be on your team, right? I want to be on Team Bitcoin. You could even make a case that this looks like a cup and handle, but boy, you got a failure this week, right? Or at least this is a 4-hour chart in the last few days. That concerns me. So then let's change our time frame perspective, and this is the daily. So, what you see as an inverse head and shoulders on the downside, what I see in a higher time frame could be, and it's kind of shaky here, a real head and shoulders. Here's the left shoulder, and here's the head, and here's the right shoulder. And notice that how our right shoulder supply zone lines up with our left shoulder. So for me, Thomas, you get me on your team, I really need to see Bitcoin get above 120,000. That would tell me that this, whatever this is, maybe a downsloping neckline for Bitcoin, is not valid. But to me, it's like you said, I think there's some wood to be chopped in this one.
Yeah, and I think those are all very valid points, John. And I just want to remind everybody, we're coming into Q4 of 2025. And John, I have said from the very beginning that we did M-Market on close. This was back in 2022. That Q4 of 2025, in my opinion, based on past cycles, would be the mania phase. Okay, the mania phase of the 4-year crypto cycle. So, John, I don't want to be too braggadocious, but I've predicted a lot of the things that have come to happen in the crypto space over the last 3.5 years. I'm not going to back off of this. Why would I do it when you get to almost the final finish line? So I think crypto is headed for a really strong Q4. I think the stock market is headed for a really strong Q4. I think you're going to see Bitcoin hit new all-time highs. I don't like to give price targets, John, because who the heck knows? You got to just take it as it comes. But I think you could see potentially Bitcoin get up into the 160 range before things cool off.
Yeah, I've heard numbers 160, 185, and don't forget our buddy Tom Lee told us 250,000 by the end of this year, right?
Yep, exactly.
All right. Again, another story that time will tell for us, right?
The good news, unlike the Tesla story, this one's going to happen in the next 3 months. So for sure, John and I are going to be with you guys to cover this one.
God willing, right? God.
Right. Knock on wood, guys. Knock on wood. All right, John. So we've covered Tesla. We've covered MicroStrategy. We've covered Bitcoin. Let's just make it a complete show on high risk assets, and let's just talk about small cap stocks. And I know some people are going to roll their eyes. They're going to be, oh, you guys have talked about small cap stocks a whole bunch of times in the past. I'll be honest with you guys, I capitulated my small cap position a while ago. I just got tired of waiting for the dang things to take off. It was a small position, but I just got tired of it. But here we are. The Fed has started their rate cutting cycle, which we have said in past shows would be, or at least should be, bullish for small cap stocks. And then this happened yesterday, John. IWM, right? The barometer for small caps hit an all-time high, the first all-time high this year. The last one came in November of 2024. So, John, the last one fooled me. I thought the last one we were off to the races didn't happen. Is this the one, John? Please, is this the one where we finally start to take off?
Well, I mean, again, we talked about the fact that the market has definitely been rallying on the anticipation of rate cuts, right? I mean, it started about mid-August, or excuse me, mid-May, when there was hints that we're going to cut. So, the market's already reacting to that. And again, like you said, if you go back in 2024, that was actually a test of a previous high. It goes back to 2021. So we're looking at the highest closing price today in 3 years. When you think about when the rest of the indexes have been making new all-time highs for almost a couple of years now. So I think there is momentum here. I think that there is some opportunities in this space. The question I have for you, Thomas, or what I'm thinking out loud is that, do I want to invest in the IWM? And the reason why I might be leery about it is, which has always been my concern, is that, it's 2,000 stocks, but, most of those stocks are not profitable companies. You get a lot of, I hate to say the word garbage, but that would be something. Now, which is kind of interesting is, now I'm going to pull up a side-by-side comparison here. So on the left, we have the IWM. On the right, we have what is called the S&P small cap, which is the S&P 600. Now, which is kind of interesting is that IWM is making all-time highs, where the S&P 600 is actually lagging a little. Although you can look at remember, look at this. This is a nice V bottom, another V bottom here. So there could be this kind of momentum on both of these. So the question really becomes, do you want to invest in the IWM, or do you want to invest in the S&P 600? Well, what makes the S&P 600 a little bit different is that they have a lot more stringent qualifications to get into that list. And two of them is liquidity and profitability. So what you're doing is, in the S&P 600 is you're getting all the best companies that are in the Russell 2000. Now, typically, the S&P 600 outperforms the Russell 2000 on basis about 1.5% to 2% on a year-to-year basis. Now, recently, the IWM has outperformed the S&P 600, as we can see here on these two charts. But that might be because a lot of cheap stocks, or we could say garbage stocks, have come way off of their lows, which also plays into this idea that we've talked about many, many times, is that the market, this risk on, this speculation aspect of the market. But here's the thing. What I did was I created a watch list of the IWM, and I did based on here, and I'm sorting by performance, and these are the top performers on a 3-month basis. Now look at this. You can see it is Mr. Cooper, SanDisk, and so on and so on. Now, don't blink, Thomas. I'm going to now show you the watch list of the S&P 600. Did you see anything change? Well, go back. No. So I think from a trading aspect, from an investing aspect, here you could buy into the S&P 600. And now, full disclosure, I do have a very small position, less than 2% of my portfolio. But I get the best of the small cap world, where I'm gaining that momentum that we see in both the IWM and the S&P 600.
So, John, if you were somebody who wanted to just trade, not invest, just trade small cap perhaps for, let's say, a few days, maybe a few weeks, maybe a month. Would it be better to go with the IWM in that case because it's just has more volume, it has more liquidity? Whereas if you're an investor and you want to hold for, let's say, a period of at least 1 year, maybe this money-making small cap opportunity would be a better fit.
I think that's a fair assessment, right? But I still, this one has decent volume. I still think, again, we've talked about this idea of, trading the cream of the crop, right? We've talked about the concentration in the S&P. Well, could there be a concentration here in both, the IWM and the S&P 600? And so, if you really want to kind of play that momentum thing, why don't you play the momentum that is really driving the index itself and these top 5 or 6 stocks, right? I mean, Mr. Cooper's in that kind of that idea of financials, of mortgages and short-term loans. And then I think you did a tweet on SanDisk. Was it Kratos Defense? That's that whole drone thing. MP Materials, that's the whole rare earth thing. So these are all momentum areas anyways, right? So I would probably really rather play the individuals than the two different indexes.
All right, fair enough. All right, wow. I think this is an excellent timing, John. Basically right at 31, 32 minutes. I can't remember the last time we actually pulled that off, so bravo.
I know the reason why.
All right. We've got definitely some questions that have come in. Guys, I just want to remind everybody, do John and I a favor. If you guys are watching on social, go ahead and leave a comment. Tell us what you liked about the show, maybe respond to one of the segments that really resonated with you. If you don't mind, share it with your friends, your family. I know John and I always really appreciate that. All right, John. So we got a question that was actually sent in ahead of time, and it has to do with RSI. So looking at whether stocks are overbought, oversold. Well, it just so happens right now, obviously, with the market at all-time highs, a lot of stocks, including big stocks, John, are really high in the overbought category. So we've said before, even if a stock is overbought, it can remain overbought for a long period of time, John. So do you believe that's the case, or does the fact that so many of these stocks being overbought, does that concern you and potentially signal that the market is?
It does. So the question itself was, in the wording of the question, the person asked, are these stocks, they're basically talking about tech stocks, are they investable? And so that is a very weighted word, right? Because investable means that, your time horizon is a lot longer. Again, is Tesla investable, right? Certainly it's probably overbought in the short term, right? Because of this little pop it has. But if I have a 10-year price horizon, then is it investable? Yeah, of course it's investable. But is it tradable, right? And that's kind of that difference. So, yeah, my concern from a tradable aspect is that when you start seeing a cluster of stocks in the same sector or, industry group, that could be a sign to me of, exuberance or, market getting a little bit of ahead of itself, right? And that's exactly what we've kind of seen in this last little move of recent in all of them, right? You can look at all Oracle and Intel and, I could name a whole bunch in recent weeks that have really kind of surged, right? So, yeah, it's positive momentum, but maybe again, this could be more of an exuberant story, right?
Here's a good point from John. Again, this is about our Tesla story, John. He points out, and John, I agree with you 100%. Tesla's driverless tech is entirely different from Waymo. John, well, he made a second comment. John, I'm not sure if you're bullish or bearish on Tesla, but Tesla tech is just completely different. It's already been trained on so many vehicles. They just have a huge advantage. And to be honest, there's a reason why Tesla bulls don't talk about Waymo. They're just not concerned about it right now, right. despite the fact that it's part of Google. Never underestimate Google. That would be a mistake. But Tesla's just, in my opinion, just too far ahead in the game. All right, John. So let's move to nat gas because we got a question on this. They want to know what your thoughts are on nat gas for the rest of this year, the wintertime. Would you look at, if you're bullish, would you look at something like Boyle?
Yeah, again, I think we've talked about this multiple times. As you know, I would play Boyle on a short-term momentum basis. I would not be using it as an investment vehicle because it recalculates every day, and the way they use the derivatives to get that that leverage. You get 2 or 3 up days, and then you get one down day, and it gives back everything. The other thing I told you about is that we're in this, what is called the shoulder period, right? Where we're kind of moving from the summer to the winter. And so, there's not a lot of drivers for the price of natural gas. I still believe natural gas in the long term is a positive story. I still like, the whole data center electricity idea. 45% of all U.S. Electricity is by burning natural gas. But there is some, looking maybe 2 or 3 years down the line, there is some talk about there might be starting to see a glut in the LNG space, which could be difficult. But I still believe that sometime in the next 3 to 4 months that we're going to see the price of natural gas get closer to $4.50 to $5 than it is today, where we can see is kind of in a sideways kind of going nowhere pattern, which is around $3.20. On the downside of it, I would give you a number around $2.85. But I do believe that if we get any kind of winter, we have any kind of problems with Russia, with sanctions, and if we have any problems with what's going on in Europe, I think there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to be in the low to mid $4 for natural gas. And I wouldn't even put it out of the realm of reality of maybe even $6 before the winter is over.
John, gold and silver miners are soaring today. In fact, I know people talk about the underlying gold, John, and the year it's had, but gold miners have done phenomenally well. Do you play gold miners at all, John? And what do you think the reason for the outperformance of gold miners over gold is?
I just think it was a catch-up story, to be honest with you. You'd have to do the math here, but I think gold is up almost over 40%, where I don't think the gold miners are up that much in terms of performance. Maybe they are. I don't know. Let's see.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, they are. Yeah, they're up. They're up. The last I looked, they were up over 100%.
Yeah, but I'm talking a year to date. So they're lagging a little bit behind the price of gold, right? Obviously, the gold story is going to be the dollar index story, right? Or the dollar story. Now, it is kind of interesting that you told me that that these are up today, because I noticed that also today that, so here is the dollar. So the dollar has been in a range here. This is a monthly chart. So we are on the bottom end of the channel, which, could be support. And if I look at this on, let's say, a 4-hour time chart, the dollar did rally today. So it is interesting that both gold miners, and the dollar rallies, which might also be another negative for the stock market. So I personally rather own the bullion than the miners, because then you have other issues with miners. You have, labor costs, resource costs, energy costs. I'd rather just own the gold outright.
John, is this something you follow at all? How many new gas powered plants are being built? Is that something you look at all in the energy space?
Yeah, I'm always watching. I'm always fascinated by the development of where the energy grid is, right? Actually, you're really seeing a lot more energy production coming from, believe it or not, solar. And we got this trendy nuclear thing that's going. A lot of multiple nuclear plants are being restarted. But yeah, that is definitely something that I look at, right? And I really kind of rely on, if you really want to get deep into it, is a web page is called EIA. It's the Energy Information Administration.gov. And that's a great resource to get all that kind of type of information.
John, this is one of your favorite topics. What would you be doing as far as sector rotation goes for the rest of the year?
Well, I still like tech. I just want to get away from the tech heavies, right? Or the ones that we know, the Mag 7s. And I like financials, right? Because of the interest rate story. I still believe that materials and, in that space, like, for instance, aluminum, steel, even coal will do well. And then, of course, I'm going to be watching some of these small cap stocks, not the whole group, but those momentum plays that are in it. And you saw what were the top of them. Was it financials, drones, battery storage, and what was the other one we were talking about? I forget. Well, anyways, go to the next question. Oh, yeah, there you go. There's materials. There it is. So, yeah, that's what I'd be looking at.
John, when you're waiting for confirmation to make a buy, what happens if while you're waiting for that, the price of an asset just shoots up 20, 30, maybe 40%? Is that you just chalk it up as, oh, well, that's a missed opportunity, or do you reevaluate and look for another entry, or just?
Well, I'm certainly not going to chase. Yeah. In the cycle of price, this is something I talk about a lot. In an uptrend, you get impulses and corrections, right? Higher highs and higher lows. So just because you missed out on the breakout opportunity and the market gaps up 20% or whatever, doesn't mean there's not an opportunity, right? I'm going to wait for that correction. A lot of times there's gaps that below that could be filled. That's a great entry. Or, I'll wait for, an RSI pullback. Let's say I'm in an uptrend and my RSI gets into the overbought condition. Well, boy, if I get the RSI to fall back to like 50, right? That's, to me, is actually a buy signal, right? So it's a combination of technical analysis and also looking at a chart in terms of looking at the structure form. Old highs make good levels of support.
Oh, this is an interesting question because we discussed this as a potential topic, John. What are your thoughts on NVIDIA right now?
Again, I want to diverse myself from, the big caps. And certainly all of us, I think we all own too much NVIDIA, right? In our passive accounts. And Thomas and I had a discussion about this one, and I know that you're a big fan. To me, if I look at this price action, to me, this feels like a distribution pattern. Now, again, is this just a pause in a greater picture of a longer term uptrend? Yeah, it could be that, but it just has this feel to it that momentum is rolling over. In other words, if I look at my moving averages, right? So here we can see the 20-day moving average is crossing over the 50. The 50, yeah, it's still upsloping, right? But it's starting to flatten out, right? If I look at it in terms of, momentum, right? What is happening? RSI, again, this would be probably a good buying opportunity of recent, where the RSI was from the overbought, got down and held 40, and now it's back above 50, but it didn't carry through, right? It got above 50, but it didn't carry through. It didn't take 60 out. So that tells me there's a roller. And look at the momentum here, right? The MACD, it's flat, right? So again, this could be just consolidation, but to me, I feel like this is a distribution pattern. And that means that I think the market, this particular individual stock, could have a correction in it. And if you think about what we talked about in the first segment, if we do get a small pullback in the S&P, right? Well, this is the stock, right? This is literally the stock market, right? Now, this one stock. And where could that pullback come to? Well, it looks like there's a little gap here that I've identified around the 147. Is that a big pullback in this stock? Not really, right? What is that, about less than 10%, right? I think that would be a great buying opportunity for this stock, right?
Yeah, and for what it's worth, guys, NVIDIA, I've said before, I've been extremely bullish on NVIDIA. It's been the largest position in my portfolio for a while. I will say I've trimmed, John, I've trimmed a little bit of the position between the 150 and 180 price range. I'm still comfortable with my position, but we got to ring the register once in a while, right, John? Profits are not profits if you don't sell.
Right. Hey, and we're starting to getting a lot of stories that are chipping away at the armor of NVIDIA, right? We hear that China is not going to buy their chips, or that some of their customers are building their own chips, right? And then there was another story that China supposedly created a new AI computer that only uses Chinese chips, and then it's 100 times faster and a tenth of the cost. We don't know if that's true or not, because we have to discount everything that comes out of China. But all these news stories are kind of chipping away at, right? And when you get this big and you get these large numbers in terms of performance, you got to really make a lot of money to really start moving this stock. So that's why I'm kind of neutral on this one.
All right, guys, we got one final question. Guys, if you ask multiple questions and we can't get to it, I apologize, but we get so many questions these days, we can only do one per person. John, this is about the symbol XSMO. I never heard of it. I just looked it up. It's a small cap momentum ETF, which is based, John, on what you talked about earlier, the S&P 600. I just read the description briefly. It looks to me like it's more of a momentum play on the small cap space, John, whereas the one you discussed earlier might be more of an investable, long-term investable opportunity. Mm-hmm.
So what's the question?
The question is, do you invest in this? Do you like it? What are your thoughts on it?
I don't. This is the first time I've ever seen it. Okay, so, I mean, the idea, the philosophy, right, plays into what we just talked about. So there's a lot of benefits to it. I would be, it's all about risk management here, right? I mean, it looks like we're making an all-time high. Are we getting a breakout? So, what is this high here? It's like $74. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the technical analysis on this. And I'm going to say, okay, well, here my 20-day moving average is about $1, right? So I want to see this stock get above the all-time high by 1.5 times the ATR. So that would be somewhere around, closer to $76. So that would be that bullish momentum. Now, if it's doing that while it's getting into the overbought condition, well, then I'm going to be waiting, right, that we're in the impulse. Then I'm going to wait for that pullback. Where that pullback could be, well, it could be somewhere in this 73, 74 price range. But it doesn't matter the vehicle. You still need a trade plan, and you still need to have, the opportunity and the risk management to take advantage of it.
It looks like it's tracking IWM, honestly, John. It's almost got the exact same chart pattern. The previous all-time high was late last year, and now it just hit a new all-time high.
Yeah, I mean, we can do that. We can look at that main panel. Yep, let's see what it looks like. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. All right, that is it, John. We got to every question. Good job, man.
Well, thanks. I appreciate it, my friend. All right, what else?
Quick reminder, guys, John and I are both on vacation next week. Going anywhere fun, John?
I am definitely going to go down to Florida and in the Florida Panhandle. So if anybody's down in the Destine area, look me up and I'll buy you a beer. Yeah, one more jaunt for the end of the summer, right? We got to have one more jaunt, right? And I don't think much is good. We're not going to miss much over the next week and a half. But when we come back, full nose to the grindstone, right, Thomas?
You got it. And I just got a feeling Q4 is going to be interesting, John. I do too. I feel it in my bones.
The year started off with a big bang of volatility. I think it's going to end with a big bang of volatility as well. So
Absolutely.
All right, thanks, folks, for attending. I hope you guys got something out of it. Tom and I always appreciate your participation and watching. And so until next time, best of health, manage your risk, and the good of all trading.